The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone and welcome to today's Rx-360 webinar. My name is Emily Moss and on behalf of the Rx-360 organization and our supplier-led working group, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. I work closely with the Rx-360 Secretariat, so I'll be doing some of the housekeeping and administrative work for today's webinar before I turn it over to our primary presenters. It looks like everyone is just dialing in at the moment, so we'll give everyone a few seconds to log in to today's webinar. Okay, and in the interest of time, we'll just go ahead and get started with our program today to make sure that we have plenty of time at the end to answer any questions that our attendees might have. So once again, my name is Emily Moss with the Rx-360 Secretariat. And I'll just give a brief overview of the agenda for today's webinar. I'm going to spend a few minutes on our GoToWebinar operation and housekeeping. So for those of you who've used GoToWebinar before, this should be all repeat information, but for those of you who are new to the software, it does have a few quirks. So we want to explain how to interact with the software and make sure that we get any questions that you might have. Then I'll provide a brief overview of Rx-360 and where the supplier assessment questionnaire and the supplier-led working group fit within the larger Rx-360 organization before I hand it over to our primary presenters, the co-chairs of the supplier-led working group, who will provide a detailed overview and discussion of the supplier assessment questionnaire project. And then we'll leave some time at the end to take any questions that you might have, and if we have some time, a brief discussion of the supplier assessment questionnaire. So if we could move forward to the next slide, please. So just very quickly to go over the operation of our GoToWebinar program. If you have not done so already, please take a second to enter your audio PIN. That PIN is on the right-hand side of your screen in the box marked audio, right under the dial-in number and access code. You press the pound sign, the number, and then the pound sign again. This will enable you to speak on the call. Just a note that everyone on GoToWebinars are automatically muted to minimize background noise and interruptions. However, we do have the ability to selectively unmute, and we will do so to facilitate questions and discussion. So if you think you might have a question or want to speak on the call, please make sure that your audio PIN is entered. And just another note that we are recording today's presentation for Rx-360. Just so everyone is aware. The next slide, please. There are two main ways to interact with the GoToWebinar software in order to ask questions. If you'd like to ask a question verbally, you can go ahead and click the little sign that looks like a hand on the right-hand side of your screen. That will tell us that you have raised your hand, and we can then click on you, unmute your phone line, and you can ask your question verbally. If you'd rather submit a question in written form, you can simply type a message in the question box on the right-hand side of your screen where it says type a question. We will be tracking questions throughout the webinar, and I will try and throw them to our co-chairs or our presenters in a somewhat organized fashion at the end of the call. If you have any technical issues in the meantime, you can also try and ask through the question, and I will do my best to assist insofar as I can. And go to the next slide. So at this point, I'd like to just take a few minutes to go over Rx-360 as a whole. I believe a number of our attendees are actually Rx-360 member companies, so you're probably quite familiar with the organization. But this is a public webinar, and so I think we have a few folks on the line who may not be as familiar with Rx-360 as an organization. So the Rx-360 mission statement is on the screen. Rx-360 is a global consortium with an end goal of patient safety by working to develop best practices and improve the integrity of the healthcare supply chain and the quality of materials that go through the supply chain by embracing and utilizing increases in globalization and 21st century technology. Next slide, please. Rx-360 has a number of objectives, but the primary one is to work as a means of facilitating dialogue between industry regulators and sometimes patients. We try and provide a forum to exchange public information, discussing best practices and improving those practices, bringing industry experts together, both to work on those best practices and take action to threats or security issues within the supply chain. We act as a clearinghouse for any suspicious information. Rx-360 also has a large audit program. We've tried to develop individual audits, and we've also created a joint audit program to allow companies to share some of the administrative and financial burdens of conducting audits. And we also work on technological development to find means to apply developments to the supply chain and increase the integrity and security of the supply chain. Rx-360 considers it important to work within the existing regulatory systems and oversight, not to replace or override any of those systems. And we make sure to maintain strict compliance with competition and antitrust laws by keeping our discussions public and discussing primarily public information. Next slide, please. Rx-360 has a global membership consisting of both small and very large companies. We work with both suppliers and manufacturers of branded and generic products. We try and use Rx-360 as a means to bring suppliers and manufacturers to the table together, which is part of what we're doing today from the supplier-led working group. And we also encourage regulatory agencies and industry organizations to participate as observers so that they can be part of the discussions that Rx-360 facilitates and have input into some of the best practices and similar discussions. Next slide. Rx-360 is a 501c6 organization. Our memberships are through companies, and then companies nominate individuals to become involved either on the board, the oversight committee, or any one of our multiple working groups that focus on specific projects. This slide just gives you a brief overview of how Rx-360's current projects are organized, and to give you an idea of where today's focus is, on the right-hand side under Focused Industry Initiatives, the Supplier Assessment Questionnaire project comes from our supplier-led working group. In fact, it's one of their first major projects. The supplier-led working group is a fairly new group for Rx-360. They've just completed their first year of operations. It's been a very productive year. But they are really working to bring suppliers into the larger discussion of Rx-360. Next slide. And so with that, part of what the supplier-led working group has been focused on is the drafting of a supplier assessment questionnaire for industry. And so to tell you more about that, I'd like to introduce our main presenters for today, Rick Calabrese and Gary Perkins, the co-chairs of our supplier-led working group. Without these two, our working group really would not exist. They've done an incredible amount of work, both on this project and on getting the group off the ground. And so I'll give them the opportunity to introduce themselves, and then they will have the floor. Rick and Gary?
Okay. Thank you, Emily. This is Rick Calabrese. I'm a Global Director of Quality Systems for Sartorius. We are part of a supplier group, and my company saw huge importance for us to be part of this. And that is why I took on to be the co-chair of this group, along with my fellow co-chair, which I'll turn over to now, Gary.
Thanks, Rick. My name is Gary Perkins. I'm the Director of Quality Services. I work for Sigma Aldrich, and I've been in the quality industry for about 24 years. All of it, we're very proud that Sigma's been part of the founding member of Rx-360, and certainly wanted to work with Rick and the rest of the team on this supplier-led working team to bring these type of solutions to suppliers. So thank you all for joining today. We appreciate your time. All right, next slide.
Okay. All right, let me tell you all a little bit about the supplier-led working group. It's a group comprised of not only suppliers, but pharmaceutical companies and biotech companies within the pharmaceutical industry. This is a working group where the purpose for it is for us to work together as a team so that we could create tools and guidelines that will be beneficial to not only the suppliers, but also to the end users, but ultimately to our ultimate goal, which is patient safety and improving the patient experience. If there's anybody interested in participating in the supplier working group, please contact the Rx-360 Secretariat, and you'll see the email address on the screen right now. Next slide. All right, why did we do a questionnaire? Okay, well, number one, anybody who's either had to fill out a questionnaire or had to request a questionnaire be filled out knows that they're very labor intensive. If you're on the end where you have to create one and send it out, you know you could be waiting a while to get these things completed. And on the other end, if you have to fill one out, it could take a lot of time to get all the information from all different parts of your company to properly fill it out. There's a lot of resources used on both ends, and also reviewing them. This is a tremendous workload for both suppliers and for the end users who have to go through these. To put this together, we've taken questionnaires from many different sources, from different companies, and we analyzed them, and we took what we thought was the culmination of all of them, and we took this into account when we created this current document that we have. Next slide. All right, so here's some additional information why we deemed that this project was the first project that we were going to take on in the newly formed supplier-led initiative. The first is that the Upstream Supplier Working Group, another part of Rx-360, surveyed our members and found out that there was a need for supplier tools. In fact, 54% of the people responded said that they definitely needed some type of supplier surveillance tools. And another part of the survey, we asked people, do you have SOPs for how to respond to questionnaires or surveys? And most people said no, they didn't have anything. So then we took this information and into our thoughts when we were organizing our group and said, hey, maybe the first things we need to do is look into a questionnaire. If you want further information on the Upstream Supplier Working Group Supply Chain white paper, you could get that through here, going through, just click on where it says here, or you could go to the Rx-360 website, and it's posted on there. Next slide. All right, we held a meeting at the beginning of the summer down in D.C., and we did some polling of the participants at that meeting. And one of the questions we asked them is, would your company benefit from decreasing the time spent filling out questionnaires as well as decreased return time to manufacturers. And as you can see by looking at this, 79%, that's a no-brainer. Yeah, I think everybody would benefit from the reduced time, either filling it out or waiting for it. So we were thinking and why we went in the direction of building this survey tool. Next slide. Do you anticipate that your company will utilize the Rx-360 template assessment questionnaire as a standard for assessing your vendors? And again, it was a majority, 53% of the people said yes. But the thing that's more surprising is that this was presented at the meeting, and a lot of people weren't fully aware that a tool was being created, and that we were going to be publishing it very shortly. So my guess is now, if we did the survey again after this is announced, you'd see that third column, don't know, go down, and that first column go up substantially more. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, and this is where I turn it over to my co-chair. I'm going to turn this over to Gary Perkins right now.
Thank you, Rick. As you've seen from Rick's previous slides, the reasoning behind the development of the questionnaire, we want to focus now on kind of what the intent. When we created this, we really wanted to develop a document that was going to help both suppliers and manufacturers. So this SAQ is a four-part supplier assessment questionnaire. It's more detailed than most, and ideally it will decrease the number of times that questionnaires will need to be filled out by the supplier, and thus, because it will be available immediately, it should significantly decrease the turnaround time back to the manufacturer. So we definitely see positives for both suppliers and for industry. So the SAQ, as it's released today, consists of 4 modules: a general company module, a specific site module, and then a product-specific appendix and a service supplier appendix. These 4 modules can be used for small companies and big companies alike. They lend themselves to filling out for a large company that has multiple sites, and we'll go into a little bit more detail of how and why those were designed that way. Next slide. Okay, so the SAQ is available in multiple formats to allow for different needs of different companies. So there's currently an Excel version that has multiple tabs, that has those 4 sections of tabs, and along with an explanatory segment on how to use the tabs. There's a Word version and a PDF version. All of these versions are protected content in the sense that you can electronically fill in the documents with expandable fields. It should be and was designed for easy completion by the suppliers, and hopefully easy review and scoring by the manufacturers. As I said before, it's kind of a modular design, so it lends itself to working for both small and large companies. Suppliers can fill out the company module one time, have that available, and then fill out multiple site modules for each of their applicable manufacturing or service sites. And then, depending on how each company wants to approach it, product and service modules can be completed for high volume products or services as needed, or they can be filled in on demand. Next slide. So the documents are currently available on the Rx-360 website. They're available as a download from the Supplier tab. So if you go to the main Rx-360 website, there's a Suppliers tab. You click on that tab, and it gives you an overview of the documents. And then at the bottom, there's the ability to view or download these in all of the current formats, along with the version date. So you'll be able to check and see when the version date has changed, so that you'll always be able to use or download the most up-to-date versions. Next slide. All right, so we want to talk a little bit about the guidelines for use and how the supplier-led working group envisioned these. As we had said, we looked at many different supplier questionnaires. We had a large group of participants in our team, and we're able to talk about best practices and really how these questionnaires are used in the industry. So one thing I want to be clear about, that each company using the SAQ, sending those out to their suppliers or accepting them from their suppliers, will still need to interpret, assess, and score the questionnaire as you've done with your previous questionnaires. Rx-360 and the questionnaire is not designed to for Rx-360 to make a determination of the quality of the supplier. Obviously, individual companies are going to have to be responsible for determining that risk for their product and their intended use, and then following up with suppliers if more information is needed based on the information collected in the SAQ. Next slide. All right, so we'll just go through what we're suggesting are some best practices for suppliers. We would suggest that suppliers complete the general company module ahead of time and have it immediately available for manufacturers upon request, along with a specific site module for your major manufacturing sites or service locations. And that way, when a manufacturer or you get a request to qualify, you can match up that company module along with the site of interest and send those very rapidly back to the manufacturer or the customer that's inquiring about that, so they can immediately be doing that risk assessment. We would suggest that, like I said, these be filled out ahead of time, and then there may be product or service modules that you can also fill out for some high-demand products. I know within Sigma-Aldrich, we're filling this out for a lot of our top products, so that the ones that we get more interest in or more use from, we'll have those available and be able to send those out right away. Other ones will be on demand. So we're kind of suggesting that that maybe that's a good way to use these and certainly cut down the turnaround time for everyone in the process. Next slide. So as I said, lesser requested products can be completed upon demand. So in addition to filling these out and having them available for your clients, your customers, we would also suggest that suppliers use these for requesting information from your own suppliers. Incorporate those into your supplier qualification program and send those out to suppliers in order to facilitate the industry-wide use of this questionnaire. We would also say that to please accept the SAQ from other suppliers and manufacturers, whether or not you're immediately available to incorporate it into your own quality systems. As other suppliers and other industry members are using it and they send it to you in lieu of filling out your personal, your customized survey, please accept the SAQ from other suppliers and manufacturers and incorporate that into your assessment. We would also suggest that suppliers will need to keep the modules updated with the most accurate information. I know many companies have been saying that they're going to put them into an annual review process so that at the very least they'll be updated annually with current information, but that they'll also be being changed and updated as significant or pertinent information change, so that whenever there's a request for information, a client will be getting the most current up-to-date questionnaire for your company. Now, we recognize that this is a comprehensive survey, the multiple modules, lots of information, but we also know that there are highly specialized sites or products that we may not have covered all information that's needed. So what we suggest to handle this is suppliers may want to create a relevant appendix for their specialized products, or if you're a manufacturer and need some specific information, you may want to send along, in addition to this, the SAQ, you may want to send along a relevant appendix with that additional information that you need to capture for your company. Next slide. All right, so for manufacturers, for the industry that is primarily going out and qualifying their suppliers, I think really one of the key adaptations that are needed is to alter the procedures within your company to send out and accept the Rx-360 SAQ. One of the main drivers for this program that we talked about at the beginning of these slides was that it is a tremendous burden for suppliers that are getting a questionnaire from every different manufacturer, and every one of them is in different formats. But when you looked at it, and we look at all these questionnaires, 95% of the questions are identical. They're all the questions being asked to qualify are very similar, and yet everybody has their own format, their own questionnaire, their own intent of how to collect that information. And so that's what creates the lengthy delays and the tremendous amount of resources that are spent. And there's several companies that were getting 30, 40 of these questionnaires per month, some of them more, and just a tremendous amount of resources in constantly refilling out the same information into different forms. So the industry really needs this standardized approach, and one of the ways to do that is to have the manufacturers incorporate this industry standard or this common format into their internal company procedures. So that's really one of the suggestions for manufacturers is incorporate that in there. And we do have some slide decks available that we can send you to help educate and help implement that this questionnaire within your internal groups, within your internal company. And these slide decks can be used to educate and help drive the intent of the Rx-360 questionnaire. So if anybody's interested in those slide decks, we can certainly make them available if they're not already out there on the website. And then of course the second item is whether or not you're immediately able to incorporate them into your system. As suppliers are using these, we really encourage you to accept them. Like I said, most of the information that you'll have on your questionnaire will be included, plus a lot more, on this Rx-360 SAQ. And you can accept these from suppliers and then integrate that information into your existing system until you have time or until you're able to modify your systems to begin using the questionnaire. And as I said, it's very comprehensive. All 4 modules have a tremendous amount of information. But if there are highly specialized questions that you need for your organization or your specific end product, we encourage you to create a short appendix that can be sent alongside this SAQ, alongside the Rx-360 SAQ, rather than just not supporting the use of the SAQ because there's a few questions that maybe aren't included for your organization. So please consider creating that appendix to bridge any gap in that system. And we'll say this again at the later part of the presentation, but as you're using this and downloading this, whether you're a supplier or manufacturer, please provide your input. There's several different ways of providing feedback and input, and let us know what is a critical thing that may be missing, or what is a format change that maybe would allow easier use and adaptation, and we're trying to update that into a new version in October, and then frequently throughout the years as we continue to keep this up to date. Next slide. So in conclusion, and we'll open this up for questions. We really try to have this set up so that we can answer a lot of questions. We want to kind of reemphasize, the reason we set this up, the reason that when we did these polls was that there really seemed to be a need. There's a lot of resources that are wasted on the supplier side and on the manufacturer side chasing these questionnaires, trying to fill these out, and we really believe that the overall industry can benefit, and we can spend more resources on other parts of securing the supply chain by eliminating some of these redundancies, these time-consuming questionnaire chasing. Streamlining the process of approving suppliers. We really feel that this questionnaire lends itself to that. And then from a manufacturer side, it does allow comparative analysis of basic information. When we're all using the same format, the same questions, it makes it very easy to look at that information side by side and really compare suppliers and quality systems and issues. So in conclusion, those are some of the reasons and benefits as to why we think this will be a real positive for you, your company, and for industry. Next slide. As I mentioned before, there are several ways to give input. Certainly the questionnaires are live now. You can download those in one of several different formats. We would appreciate you looking through those, do a test completion, fill those out, look through those. But then there's a Survey Monkey available that we're collecting feedback. So just off your first glance or your first go through that, please give us some feedback. Submit your comments by October 1st if potential. We are doing a face-to-face working group meeting, and one of the main topics that we're doing at this meeting is to incorporate all the feedback that we've received from this first 6 weeks of having the documents live. We went live about October. We've gotten a lot of good feedback. This is our third webinar, our second public webinar, and so we really appreciate any comments, questions that you have. And you can send those either by Survey Monkey, you can send them directly to the info@rx360.org website, and we appreciate any feedback you can give. We'll be distributing this presentation, and there are direct links to the questionnaires in the presentation, but you can also go to the Rx-360 website and click on the Supplier tab. Next slide. All right, I think, Rick, if I can speak for you, we'd like to thank all of the Rx-360 supplier-led working group team members that helped put these questionnaires together. It was a large group and a lot of effort, and we certainly couldn't have done it without the help of this entire team. I would also like to point out, if you look at the team members and the different companies, you'll see it's not just suppliers, but a lot of manufacturers are also included in this list, and there's lots of feedback from, we received lots of feedback from many different industry partners. So we thank every one of them, and we know everyone's working hard to begin incorporating this into their organizations. Next slide.
Okay,
sorry,
Gary,
go ahead.
Sure, I was just going to add, not only do we have all these members, as you said, that helped us out so much, but we had tremendous support from the Secretariat at Rx-360 to help us with this project. Emily, who was at the beginning of this, and in the background there was Didi Godstay, and also Mary Devlin Capizzi also helped us tremendously with this project.
Absolutely. With that, I think, Emily, we can open this up for any questions, and then we appreciate everyone attending the webinar.
Great, thank you, Rick and Gary. We do have about 25 minutes remaining in our webinar session, so if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand or type it into the question box.